Every day we face unseen battles, fear, doubt, negativity, and temptation. The question is, are we walking into them unguarded or armored in light? The world trains us to armor our bodies, right? But what about our spirits? What shields your heart, your mind, your soul? Armor is not just an outward protection for warriors. It is truth for the mind, compassion for the heart, and light for the soul. Spiritual armor is not about fear, it's about freedom. It's what allows you to stand strong, to serve humbly, and to shine without being broken. My name is Justin Gates. You're listening to the new Ashla Podcast. Welcome to the podcast today, joined by my homie, my brother from a different mother.
Hey,
Michael
fam.
Perry. You guys are probably, lately it's been like almost Michael doing all the introductions, huh? They're like, oh, he finally decided to do something today.
You've been saving the gold.
I've been saving the gold, yeah. So today we're going to talk about spiritual armor. And I guess the only way to really get into this, Michael, is to start off by saying, why do we need spiritual armor?
You know, there's so much going on around us, and, you know, it's so easy to get lost in the monotony and chaos that is life. And the importance of spiritual armor is that it can ground us in the present. It can ground us in ourselves from the need to control things outside of ourselves, which we all are afflicted with from time to time. This armor helps bring us to a baseline where we are one with the flow of the universe, with the force. And it's imperative to maintain and to be mindful of, because these are the tools that help us flow through life as well as protect our peace and give us strength.
And for a student of light, for a walker, a seeker of light, right? Putting on armor, this armor we're talking about today is not about fear, not about being fearful. It's about allowing ourselves to walk authentically and meet reality where it is. It's actually more freedom than fear, right? So it helps us stand strong in the face of this darkness, this unbalance, this stuff that's everywhere around us. As you said, it helps us to serve without being drained. Talked a lot about that leading up to this show lately, and to shine without letting ourselves be dulled or broken. This idea of spiritual armor is not paranoia. I'm not trying to scare anybody today. It's also not about walking through life rigid or hard or suspicious all the time. Here soon we're going to do a show about the knight in rusty armor. And what I'm saying, some of the stuff I'm saying now today, when we do that show, you're going to be like, oh, that makes sense, right? So it's not about being rigid or having the shiniest, undented, perfect armor, but it's also not about being super suspicious all the time or being rigid. In fact, that is the exact opposite of what we do here, right? We look for flexibility in all things. So the armor we wear, whether it's physical armor or spiritual armor, it must be flexible.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing in the tie-in that so many people might evaluate spiritual armor as, how do I protect myself from the world?
Mm-hmm.
And that armor is based in ego. This armor is based in authenticity.
In truth.
This armor is in truth, yeah. Like, this is a whole different realm, because I know plenty of people walking around with plenty of armor, but that kind of armor doesn't keep us safe in the long run. And it doesn't protect those around us.
It certainly doesn't, especially if we focus on the armor all the time, which is, you know, we should do that show sooner rather than later. Now that I'm thinking about it, we did it a long time ago in a different life. The before I was killed and resurrected into the new Ashla from the KOA, but it's a very powerful little short story, and it really does kind of tie into what we're talking about today. So I think did I ever make you read that in your studies?
No.
Okay, well, you got homework. He just shows up and gets homework. He's like,
That was every day of my training. Hey, I need an essay today. Well, when you're ready for it, but if you wanted the next lesson, you got to get that essay done.
You know? So what we're talking about today is something that's in alignment with the light. Truth. So that when the storms do come and these things do start to, attack us, and they come from all sides, we're better able to deal with it so that we're not shaken when the shadows push in around us. We're not moved. They find no foothold against us, right? So, and armor is not about avoiding battle. It's about carrying peace into it. Your peace, your stillness, your center. your balance, right? Harmony with what's happening versus what's happening inside. So when you're armored in truth and compassion and light, you don't collapse under the fear or fall into bitterness. And that's what we're trying to talk about today. So hopefully we hit the mark there, because this is a really important topic that I wanted to get to before, but now's the perfect time.
Yes, indeed.
You all right?
Sorry.
So they're choking to death. You okay?
Mhm.
You need the Heimlich or anything? You better hope. I'm gonna leave this part in. You better hope they didn't see you do your eyebrow things like that.
I'm glad Allison's not the only one who does it.
Oh no. Yeah.
I call it her spiritual eyebrows when it gets really intense.
So as I've become accustomed to doing lately, tying axioms and our agreements into these lessons, because those really are the foundation of all of our teachings, right? So responsibility ties into here, our agreement of responsibility, because we are responsible for how we prepare and protect ourselves, our total being. In this context, we're talking about our spirits and our hearts. So just as you wouldn't send a soldier out into battle untrained, right? Or you wouldn't have somebody just give them the tools of a craftsman without training or skill and expect them to produce a product that's worthy of purchase or a customer or whatever. You can't expect your spirit and your heart to thrive without some care and some protection, and most importantly, readiness. So responsibility in this context means owning the discipline of daily preparation. And really, how do we prepare daily, Michael? By practicing, right?
You know,
Practice, practice, practice. Not practicing perfectly all the time, but just practicing. Practice leads to having the skills to respond to the things that are happening outside of us. Respond versus react, right? So here's the axiom that I'm tying into this. And this axiom, you're going to have to help me explain this one, because this one sounds very sinister, right? You ready? Danger is everywhere. Manifesting an inflexible attitude lends a hand to destruction.
this is a good one. Man, I tell you what, I think this is one of the core things us as humans struggle with the most, because we all want predictability. Whether we know it or not, our survival instincts crave familiarity, and that can make us rigid. That can make us not adaptable in times of chaos, especially if things are outside of our control. And so the more we can cultivate this type of armor, the more we can cultivate ourselves. I mean, danger is everywhere. But if we can go with the ebb and flow, allow ourselves to be like, I love the analogy you gave me a long time ago about grass next to trees. All right, trees, they're strong, they're built hefty, but a windstorm comes, it's going to snap and break. You have to be like the grass, able to flow this way and that. You know, if you allow yourself to be flexible in these times, you have so many more opportunities for really having an impact. Because when these times come, we're going to be through the roof on trying to mitigate things, and our survival instincts will kick in, whatever, and we gotta hone that. We gotta bring ourselves back to baseline, focus on what we can control, so we can effectively flow with whatever's happening in our lives.
Right? Because most of that's out of our control, right? So the trees don't manifest the wind that knocks them over. They just have to deal with it. So the best armor, it's not rigid and cumbersome, right? It is designed to move with you, because, like you said, inflexibility, it snaps every time under pressure, under intense pressure. And you may be able to hold it off for a while, but eventually it will give, right? You know, physical armor, the best ones, they bend, they shift, they move, they adapt to your movements.
Just think of Mithril.
Huh?
I was like, just think of Mithril.
I don't know what that is. Is that an anime thing?
The Lord of the Rings. You know,
Okay.
how Frodo had that super protective armor that was very flexible and everything next to
Yeah.
it was the armor.
I think I've watched Lord of the Rings once. I watched it once.
This is a conversation for another time, Justin.
I know. Well, I just thought, I was like, is that an anime thing? Because I don't know
No.
anything about anime.
I was perplexed when you didn't know catch the reference.
I'm just not a Lord of the Rings. Just like if you brought up something about Harry Potter, I would have no idea what you're talking about.
Digging a hole deeper.
I know, man. I know. But I'm gonna start quoting some Star Wars and see if you understand it.
Yeah, okay, touche.
Or some Marvel or DC. I know
I'll be good with the Marvel and DC.
I can go pretty deep, bro. I can go pretty deep on the Marvel DC. You know, what color was Stan Lee's toenails painted? You know, type.
Pink with polka dots, duh.
No, white with polka dots. Thank you. All right. The strength that we find in life, as you said, is in that flow. If we can not bend, not compromise not compromise our authenticity, but to be flexible when the wind blows hard, when things start to come around us that we have no control over. The only thing we can control is how we react, right? And we always seek to respond versus reaction. So, and you're going to always fall back to your lowest level of training. In our case, practice. Your lowest level of trained practice is what you're going to fall back to. And hopefully you've practiced enough to where you're still, and you're at peace. So just like the best physical armors of the world, spiritual armor must be alive. It must move with us. It must respond to the pressures of the world like we do from a centered base, right? And not cracking, not breaking. So we need this, Michael. We need this because the battles we face aren't just these external things, are they?
I'd say more often than not, the battles we fight are more often with ourselves than they are with the world around us.
Because we react to things instead of responding. If we can learn to respond to ourselves, because most of the fights that we have, these kind of fights that we're talking about are fought in our minds, in our hearts, in our very souls. So, and if we don't do things now to prepare ourselves for when fear creeps in, for when doubt hits us, when negativity just springs up everywhere, which it does to every single one of us, even the greatest spiritual teachers to which religions have been built around, right? Even they documented struggles with themselves.
One of my favorite things to say with clients.
If it happens to them, it can happen to you, right? And it can happen to me, and it does. It does.
It's inevitable. One of my favorite things to talk about with clients is how because usually people come for coaching when they are going through a dark night of the soul, when they are in those trenches. And it's like they got these heroes they look up to that they want to become. And it's like, look, do you think that these heroes of yours did not have the same type of struggle you did? That it was as messy, as bloody, as rough as what you're going through? Because they had to learn too. They had to go through it. They weren't... Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic. But you bet in those dark days, in those moments he struggled, he had to fight with himself. He had wars that were waged internally, and that's okay. That is what builds characters, being able to be in the trenches and keep pushing through. And that's one of my favorite things to bring up with clients, because they always, am I healing enough? Am I doing enough? I feel like I'm not going anywhere, and it's like, trust me, you're not alone. Even the greats felt that way at some point in time.
Right, because as we talked about in another show, there is inherent greatness in all of us already. You're not less than. You may be struggling right now, but you're never less than. You know, when you came to me as a student, I was not greater than, right?
Right. Well, it's like you said, it's not this, it's this.
Yes.
It's where are we at on the journey? It's not I'm above you or superior. It is just, yeah. I love that analogy you gave in that episode.
Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, we could go off on a tangent and say, well, maybe I lived more lifetimes, or maybe this, maybe that, maybe that. It doesn't matter if any of that stuff is even relevant. It doesn't matter. Because in the moment, here you are, and here I am. And you're not less than. Titles, teacher, student, right? Those are just descriptors so that we can have a communicative understanding of where we are in this relationship. But that fluctuates, as we know, as we teach, as we've shared. Those roles are just there to help people understand what the hell's going on here, right? There is not a teacher out there, and we have several teachers that watch this show, actual teachers in schools across the world that watch this show, and they'll tell you, they'll back me up on this, is that every once in a while, if they allow themselves to, they find inspiration in those they're teaching from. and they learn things about themselves, and they learn things about the topic or whatever. So
there's an axiom for that.
There is an axiom for that. The student is the best.
The student is the best teacher. Yeah.
So, like all good armors, we have to build this armor from a good, solid materials.
Yeah.
And from a good set of plans and a good foundation. What should the foundation of this spiritual armor that we're forging today be made out of?
Truth. I'd say that's some of the most important substance you can have in there. Because with truth, you will always be true in your cause. As long as you're not afraid to question your own opinions, your own judgments, as long as you're willing to approach things from an honest perspective. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn is when the storm comes, and it will come, if you do not respect the storm will teach you to respect it.
It will teach you. Yes, it will. I love that. Yes, it will. It will teach you.
It's humbling. And I know anyone listening knows exactly what I'm talking about.
That's perfect. Yeah, it will teach you. That almost sounded like me. You want to keep, okay, it's going to teach you a lesson.
Yep.
I try to warn you, hey, what do I know?
Yeah. You can think you're God and you can depart the clouds, but man, you stand there, you're going to get hit by lightning eventually.
It will teach you because you're stubborn like me, probably, right?
Hey, we're all guilty of it.
We are. I don't feel guilty about being that way because although sometimes I feel like I've got it figured out and that I have ascended to a point where I'm like, wow, okay, this feels different. When you fly too close to the sun, what happens, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how good your wings were, they're still made of wax and you're going to fall.
Yep. Exactly.
Now, if you've fallen enough times, you learn how to fall gracefully. And that's really what the best you can do sometimes, because the storm will come for all of us and it will push us down a notch if we get too big for our britches. There's an old guy phrase, too big for your britches, right? So the foundation of this armor must be truth and integrity. We're all about building character here because everything else comes from that. So the foundation of our spiritual armor today is going to be truth. And by extension, our integrity, our character. Because if that's not strong, everything else collapses. Everything else falls under the weight of that pressure. Truth is what shields us from these distortions, from these illusions that, again, come at us all the time. And they usually come from within, which, why do we do that to ourselves? Well, we do. We just do. Because unfortunately, we all suffer from the same condition, Michael. We're all human, which is both the most beautiful thing. And for a soul, I believe for a soul to experience humanity as a human is probably one of the greatest things a soul will ever do. Not because humans are the best things in the universe, but because being human is hard. And you really, really learn how to be your most authentic self this way. So truth helps us deal with these distortions from fear, from lies. And those lies come from within. What's the greatest lie ever told?
The lie we tell ourselves.
The ones we tell ourselves. So when we live in the truth, we see clearly. We discern wisely, right? And it's very difficult to shake someone, to throw someone off a center by rumors or deceptions or illusions. The axiom that ties into our foundation. Let's see if you can guess. Let's see if you can guess which one.
You got me. What is it? Confusion distorts reason. When in doubt, do not act. Seek guidance and proceed cautiously.
I was thinking one that has the word truth in it. Truth has no regard
for popularity.
That's right. Because the truth does not bend to the crowd, to anything. It's not swayed by what's comfortable and fun or convenient. It sucks sometimes to be the truth teller, to live in the truth, because it means going against people you love, going against things you once held dear to you, right? But the truth stands firm, and it's a good material to build this armor with because it is unshakable. It's unbreakable. And when you clothe yourself in this, when you armor yourself in this material, you're shielded from the pressures of conformity, from the exhaustion of wearing masks. We talk about that a lot, right? So, and the corruption of dishonesty.
Well, and it's just like with truth, we can walk in our own truth. I love how you're going about this, because when we stand in our truth and we no longer feel the need to hide our shame, our shortcomings, the more we can show up authentically, the more resilient we will be at the forces that are around us. So many people now can't handle hard conversations because they try so hard to hide their inadequacies, and nothing triggers people more than when those inadequacies inevitably come to the surface. And it doesn't mean that there's a problem with you. We all have our inadequacies,
Mm-hmm.
but we try so hard to hide it from the world. And when that is front and center, the worst parts of ourselves come out.
Yeah. Which is very, very, very disrespectful. It's disrespectful to others, and it's disrespectful to yourself most of all, which is why the agreement that ties into our foundation, the materials we're using for our armor today, is respect, right? This is where respect has to start. It starts with you. To walk in truth is to respect yourself enough to live authentically. Because if you can do that, then it's easy to respect others. And you respect them enough to be honest, right? Deception devalues everything. And this might sound dramatic to say, but it devalues life itself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how I see it.
When there is nothing more draining to your energy than to constantly be trying to hide your true self from people.
Yeah.
I mean, we have this energetic bandwidth, and the more time we spend trying to not be ourselves around people, that takes so much energy that could be spent elsewhere. And it's the liberation you feel when you realize you can show up in life exactly how you are, goofy, dorky, a goober, whatever. The more, not only will life open up to you, but so will other people, because we all crave authentic connection.
Yes.
We're just waiting for someone else to show us it's okay.
Right. Right. And this is a much different world than when I remember it being when I was a kid. I don't think it's worse like a lot of old timers tend to think, because I witness this kind of awakening to authenticity. I may not always understand it, which is okay. I may not even agree with it sometimes, depending on what it is, but at least we've shifted as a society to where people are more open to be authentic, for better or for worse, because it does go both ways. But and I'm not that old, but we always hear old timers talk about, oh, the good old days, the good old days, the good old days. I don't remember the good old days being that great compared to.
Yep.
There are some things that are much better now. There are some things that were probably a little better from then, but this is how the universe works. It changes, it shifts, it moves. And if we don't move with it, that's when we get in trouble.
I was listening to an interview a while back. I wish I could remember who it was, but they were talking about how this girl was talking about her husband and how he's always reminiscing, man, I miss the good old days. And one day she finally confronted him, and she's like, you were miserable then. You were just as stressed, just about different things. There's no difference between then and now. It's just now you have something else to focus on being better than where you're at now.
Right.
It's like, man, that hit hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's like when older generations disparage younger generations, and it seems to skip, right? Like, so like, the boomers and the millennials, for example, man, they're always fighting. They're always going at each other all the time. And somehow Gen X in between those two are kind of just left alone. And everybody jokes about it, like, because we're feral and whatever. But really, it's like every other generation has a problem with that, right? Because,
Yep.
Gen Xers obviously were raised by boomers. So they kind of just leave us alone. But it's our kids that they have a problem with. They're like, oh, these damn kids, whatever. And so, I don't know if it's any better. I think some things probably were easier, or things were just different. I don't know if better or worse is good way to describe.
It's different. It's like the economy's not as good as it was back then, but look at the convenience we have. Look at the comfort we have.
Right.
So it's equivalent exchange. Yeah, because I agree. I don't think things are necessarily better than they were. It's just different.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's forge our shield. Every good armor has to have a shield, right?
Yeah.
This is the shield of our minds, and it is comprised of discernment and patience. The first battlefield that we usually run into is of the mind. Would you say?
Yep.
That's
100%.
That's where our biggest battles come from, is in our mind, as we talk about a lot on the show. The kind of thoughts that we entertain, or what voices do we listen to, right? What judgments we accept, what agreements we make with ourselves and others, those can either strengthen or weaken us. And if our mind is unguarded, what happens?
If their mind's unguarded, it leaves room for the enemy. I tell you what, the minute we start getting those insidious thoughts, and I mean, we're prone to negativity. As people, it is just how we are wired. And if we do not stand guard at the forefront of our minds will turn against us. Idle hands do the devil deeds. I love that quote. Not because of religious purposes, but because it's true. If we are idle in our life and our thinking and our actions, the devil will take place and it'll start to slowly spiral us out of control.
Yeah. When it's unguarded, fear can run rampant. The lies and the bad agreements we make with ourselves will take root and start to grow, right? Impulses, reactions will rule our actions. Instead of responding, we react to everything. And when we react, it's not always great, and usually it's not. But when we guard the mind with the ideas, with these discernment and patience, that becomes a shield that protects us and helps us see clearly, right? How does discernment help us with this?
Discernment helps us look at things from a perspective that is outside of ourselves. When we can separate our feelings and our thoughts from our evaluations, the more we can look at things logically and effectively. Because when we are emotionally driven in the moment, we're not going to act in alignment with truth. We're going to act in alignment with what feels good, what feels right. And that can lead to a bunch of poor decision making and actions that may be regretted later.
Discernment is that superpower. I'm going to call it a superpower. It's that superpower that basically helps us separate truth from distortion. It helps us act with wisdom instead of folly, right?
Mm-hmm.
It helps us tell the difference between someone who's trying to guide us and someone who's trying to tempt us. So the axiom that ties into discernment, you said it earlier. Confusion distorts reason. When in doubt, do not act. Seek guidance and proceed cautiously. Now that guidance doesn't have to be a mentor. It doesn't have to, it could be you. It should be you first, always, right? You should be your own best master, your own best mentor. But what this axiom reminds us of is that haste without clarity is dangerous. We must have clarity. We must have discernment. We must be able to see things clearly from a centered and peaceful stillness, right?
Yeah.
This is where the pause comes from. When we talk about pause, right? This is where it comes from. Is sometimes we have to go, whoa, 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 and kind of play it out to see what's going to happen if we do this, or if we say that, or if we're thinking this. So it's that pause that helps us find the wisdom before we do something crazy.
Yeah. I mean, this takes me to that Stoic quote, right? What is the beginning phrase? We have mastery over our minds, not outside events. When we realize this, you will find true strength.
Mm-hmm.
I think I butchered it a little bit, but the point still stands firm. We have only control over our own minds. We have control over very little things outside of ourselves. And if we focus and we're diligent about mastering our minds so our minds are not masters of us,
mm-hmm.
That's true power. That is real power.
It's a superpower. Yeah, for sure. And no one's going to protect your mind except for you. No one else knows how to protect your mind better than you. So it's up to you. But we also have to introduce patience into this, right? This patience, this shield must be made from discernment and patience. Because if we're impulsive all the time, we just do things without kind of using discernment and seeing things clearly, the shield will not hold. It will crack every time under the smallest of pressures, right? Because reaction without reflection exposes us to harm.
Well, and when it comes to patience, I mean, it's kind of like we were talking about earlier with the storm. The storm, you must respect the storm. You cannot rush it along. You cannot move it along. You must be patient and evaluate things. The more you try to move, the more you're going to cloud your vision and not see the full picture. You must be patient, especially in times of darkness, because you're acting from a place that is out of alignment when you move too quick through those moments.
Patience is another superpower. It's that ability to pause, to breathe, and to wait for the right moment, right? And as I'm fond of saying here, patience is not passivity. It's strength under control. It's that superpower, that ability to say, I will act, I'm going to act, but I will act with wisdom when the time is right. That's patience. And that helps us protect our mind. It keeps us from going crazy, stir crazy, as they say, right? Oh my God, all too much stuff going on. So the mind is the gatekeeper of the soul. I think I've said that before. I'm fond of that. It is the gatekeeper to probably all things, most things. So we have to guard it with discernment, and we have to study it with patience. And if we practice that enough, and we forge this shield with these pieces, discernment and patience, it becomes a shield that no deception can pierce through. So, and our unchecked thoughts can't destroy us if we're prepared, and if we're watching, standing guard over. So,
being mindful. I mean, that's just the most important thing, that pause, like you keep bringing up. If you can pause before that space, before reacting, it'll allow you to really gauge, am I acting in my own best interest right now in this situation? Or am I just letting my mind hijack me and take me for a ride?
mm-hmm. So let's forge our breastplate. This
One
thing,
of the most important parts. They're all important.
because it guards one of the most important things in our being, our hearts, right? We're going to build this from compassion, because compassion protects us from bitterness, which is really, really harmful. I know you talk about it all the time. You say we either get bitter or better, or we get bitter, right?
You know, I've never considered compassion being the root, but you're absolutely correct. You know, it's like I've talked about a lot of the stuff I've gone through in my life, but the one thing that has stopped me from getting bitter is the compassion to see things as they are. To not just see my perspective and my own pain, but to understand that this other human being who is just as flawed as I am
Mm-hmm.
had their own things that led to those events happening. And that compassion of understanding them can help you move from blame and pointing fingers to just accepting the part you play in your own suffering.
Yeah.
To learn and to acknowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, because the heart is fascinating. It is probably one of the most powerful things we possess in our being, but it's also one of the most vulnerable pieces of our being, because it could have love, it could have hope, it could connect. That's where connection happens, and we build these relationships for life based on these good things. But if we allow it to become infected or corrupted, it's also where bitterness and resentment and hate take root if we are not mindful or not steadfast. But I want to point out, to guard our hearts is not to, that doesn't mean, put them in cement, to harden them, to, they're supposed to be vulnerable. They're supposed to be pliable. They're supposed to be as they are, but we have to protect it instead of, turning it ice cold to where nothing lives into it.
I've seen many people swallowed up by the abyss just because they refuse to acknowledge that their perspective may be tainted. That there's this book I read, and I wish I could remember which book it was, where they talk about how when it comes to bitterness, when it comes to any of these negative emotions we have associated with events in our lives, the reason it's there isn't because of that surface level, it's their fault. It's because you are getting something from that. And often, it's easier to give away our power to other people and blame them for the situations they're in than it is to say, hey, I'm messing up here.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the path to bitterness, and then stagnation, health issues. I mean, the list can go on the repercussions of losing compassion in your life. When you don't allow yourself to see things beyond yourself, the world becomes a very dark place because you become your only ally. And like we talked about earlier, idle hands do the devil deeds. You let the devil inhabit your mind like that, it will slowly teach you to hate everything and everyone and to feel justified in your resentments.
Yeah. Bitterness is a poison. Bitterness is a poison. And the thing that shields us from the poison of bitterness is compassion. And as you pointed out, if you allow yourself to sit too long with the ideas of fear and hate and anger, when those things become dominant in our system, our heart becomes heavy and brittle, literally, right? We've talked about this before, where, these conditions of our being, our emotions, what we're thinking, what we're doing could literally affect us physically. People who sit too long with these things that we're talking about. They develop heart diseases, and they develop diseases in their arteries, and they do become brittle, and they do lead to death eventually. Now, I'm not saying that if you're a truly compassionate person, your heart will never give out. Of course it will. We do have expiration dates physically, unfortunately. But while you're still here, if you're truly compassionate, it keeps your heart soft enough to love, but also strong enough to not break under the weight of others' failures, others' fears, others' whatever. So the axiom that ties into this is approach understanding with light, and darkness will never gain purchase. How do you think that ties in?
Well, it's exactly that. When you have compassion, you see the light within every person in your life. This is I heard a quote a while back and I love it, and it's treat every person like they are Jesus. And it doesn't mean go worship their feet. It doesn't mean listen to everything they say like it's gospel, but it just means that we are all divine beings going through our own struggles in this lifetime, and that the same light that's within you is within everybody else. And sometimes we are conditioned by scars and wounds and just the domestication of life where we hide that light, where it taints us. And we all have these moments where we are not our best selves. And with compassion, we can see through that. You know, one thing I really want to throw into this conversation is there's a guise that you got to be careful about with compassion. Compassion is one of the most powerful things you can have. When your compassion is rooted in self-abandoning and self-sacrifice, that is one of the quickest paths to darkness, because if you are not giving yourself that compassion, that love you are giving to everybody else, if something happens and you're not receiving that from others, that too will take you down the path of bitterness and darkness. These unspoken expectations, these beliefs that you're doing all this for everyone else because you refuse to acknowledge that you're getting something from that, even if it is under the guise of selflessness. We must be conscious of our motivators and where our compassion stems from. Is it stemming from a place of lack, or is it stemming from a place of abundance?
When we choose to understand people and try to understand them, that brings truth to their condition, whatever that may be. And we do that rather than just condemning them, or to forgive, or at least do our best to forgive rather than just retaliate all the time. Darkness has trouble finding a foothold on us. Compassion transforms these things into opportunities. It does. Now we have to add a little something to our breastplate to give it strength. And I've chosen to add a dash of mercy in there. Mercy is not a weakness. I don't care what anybody says. Mercy is what gives justice and fairness its strength, its power, right? Because it helps harmonize it with the things that have happened, responding rather than reacting. To learn to forgive when wronged, when someone trespasses against us, to show kindness when we're harmed, to release those grudges instead of carrying them around on our shoulders all the time. They get heavy. Now, as I've said many times before, when we talk about mercy, it doesn't mean that you have to forgive someone who has seriously wounded you in whatever way that is. But it means that you have to learn to at least set the weight down.
Yeah.
And because those grudges that you carry, if they hurt you on purpose, they don't care. You don't need them to heal. You don't need them to forgive, but you definitely have to let it go, at least to the point where you're not carrying their weight, the weight of what they did eventually, get it off your shoulders, because it brings you down.
Well, and forgiveness is so important. I know we're going to be doing an episode here in the next month on forgiveness, but the point of forgiveness is never for the other person. It is to remove this weight. When you have bitterness and resentment, it is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yeah. Without forgiveness, it is easy to become corroded and corrupted. That allows darkness to take a foothold in our hearts. Mercy or forgiveness helps prevent that from happening, right? Think about your heart getting rusty with resentment, bitterness, hate. Mercy and forgiveness treats that. It helps keep that from happening. So this breastplate that we've constructed is not about protecting yourself from people. It's about protecting yourself for people. It allows you to love without being consumed and to forgive without becoming naive, right?
I love
to,
that.
to
Yeah.
remain open without being destroyed, because there are those out there that are trying to destroy us sometimes. But for the most part, everybody's just trying to figure it out and how to get through it without being destroyed themselves. It helps us walk with courage and it helps us walk with confidence. So, any last words
Well
on
said.
our breastplate?
I know I kind of brought it up earlier, but the most important place, compassion is one of the most powerful things in the world. But you must first give yourself compassion before you can give true compassion to others.
So, now we're going to make a sword. Sword isn't armor, Justin. It can be. I mean, in my opinion, the greatest weapon ever created was a shield, because it can be used for attack and defense, but it was constructed for defense, right? So the sword of courage. And really, metaphorically, this is us learning to take a stand, right? Courageous stand in the world. So if all we ever do is just shield ourselves, we remain passive and we start to what? Become complacent. And what does that lead us to?
Stagnation
Stagnation.
and
What is,
decay.
and then stagnation for too long becomes decay. And then what? Then what?
Well, it's
Courage.
atrophy, right? Like,
It is.
I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah. Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And then eventually you can't even move when you need to, even if you wanted to. So courage gives us the will to move forward when fear tells us to stand still. It's the power to raise our voice when silence would be safer. Just talked about this stuff a little while ago in a few other shows. It's the strength to defend what is right, even if it costs us something. So armor, building this armor, that's what protects us or helps guard us from some of these negative conditions, but courage is what makes us effective out in the world. It gives our armor a purpose, wouldn't you say?
yeah. No, it's the perfect way to say it, because action is the most important thing we can have in our lives. And even when it comes to courage, courage doesn't mean that you're able to go in, say what you need to, confront the people that need confronted. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to do what you need to despite fear. And it's one of those muscles that can atrophy so easy if we're not constantly taking action in courage. The more we avoid difficult things, the more difficult things become. And courage is the sword in which allows you to conquer your demons, to move forward, to be effective, and to build.
So we nailed courage. Now what? Now we have to talk about the responsibility of our influence. We wouldn't be much of a warrior if we didn't responsibly wield our influence, because we all have influence. Every single one of us have influence over somebody or somebody's. And we must do that responsibly. As this axiom of light reminds us, a position of influence is a position of responsibility. And again, every single one of us carries influence somewhere, whether that's in your families, your communities, your workplaces, yourself. What happens when we wield that kind of influence without having responsibility for those in our charge?
Well, I think many people don't understand exactly how much influence they have. I have always been someone who loves to talk with people, help give them advice. And that's well and good. I have helped a bunch of people work through issues and stuff, but nothing has been more impactful to the people in my life than being a role model and an example of the change I want to see. When we try to tell people how to act, how to live, most people tune it out, don't listen unless they are in a helpless, dire strait moment. The way to have true impact in the world is to be the change you want to see in the world, to be that role model, because you are influencing people whether you're doing good or you're doing bad. All right, we are all energetically connected, and when we start dropping the ball, it encourages others to drop the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And in turn, when we are picking ourselves up, it will motivate others to do the same. Our influence is ongoing and constant. Like you said, there is no one alive who is not influencing at least one other person.
Right.
Or at least it's very rare.
Well, I just chalk it up to this. There's always someone watching. And not in a creepy way, don't get weird about it, but there's always someone watching what you're doing.
Yeah. I love this parenting quote I heard.
And you may be just an influence to them in that very moment, and they may never see you again. But do not think that you don't have any influence over someone at some point.
It's all ripple effects, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite quotes I heard on parenting is, your kids never become who you tell them. They become who you show them.
That's right.
And there is so much truth to that, because that is how we work as people.
So if we wield influence, and we know we all do, to some degree or another, if we wield that without courage, we start to let harm through the gate through passivity, just by being whatever, not my circus, not my monkeys. You ever hear that quote? As we were talking about in the last show with Gabe, we are our brother's keeper in some way, shape, or form. So to have the courage to stand up for somebody or to somebody, if you don't have the courage to do that, and your influence is rooted in irresponsibility, you're allowing people to be harmed. You're allowing yourself to be harmed just through the act of being passive. There's always choice, right? And you could either choose or choose not to choose, but that's still a choice too. When you choose to not choose, you don't get to step away from the responsibility of what happens.
Doing nothing is still a choice.
It is. And it's usually the worst. It's usually the worst choice, because then you have no control over your part in something. Now, sometimes you must choose to step away, but that is an informed choice. You've used discernment and clarity, right? So
absolutely,
this sword is never meant to be used for domination. It's used for service. So the agreements that we talk about here, of course, justice, are of course courage, but also justice. Because if you're out dispensing justice in one level or the other, I'm not talking about running around being a superhero or something, but we all either dole out fairness or are on the end of fairness, and that could be right or wrong end of fairness, right? Think of justice as fairness here. Courage gives us the boldness to act, but we have to make sure that we're acting righteously, not self-righteously, but righteously, that we're being fair as we can be within our spheres of influence and within our level of control. So what is courage without justice?
Courage without justice can be recklessness.
Yeah. It becomes,
we need to evaluate what our actions. Yeah.
Becomes apathy, right?
Yeah.
I don't care what's happening to those people. That's not justice. And that's certainly not courageous. So this sword of courage is not a weapon of violence. It's a tool of light. It's what allows us to speak the truth, even when it's unpopular, to defend the vulnerable within ourselves, when they can't defend themselves, to stand firm in integrity and strong character when others bend and break. So this sword doesn't wound. It will wound, but it doesn't wound. That's not the point of it. It protects. It's not for conquering, it's for liberating. So make sure you wield it with courage, justice, and mercy, and it'll be a tool for service, true service.
And don't forget to practice. Again, atrophy. This is one of the pieces of armor that is most important to hone and to utilize consistently, because the minute you sheath it and put it on a shelf, it'll grow dull quickly. And it'll be harder to utilize down the road.
So like all good sets of armor, we have to maintain it, don't we? How do we maintain this armor?
Man, presence, mindfulness, meditation, being able to constantly have this at the forefront of our minds. We must take stock of where we are at constantly. Doesn't mean every minute of every day, but it does mean periodically checking in with yourself, evaluating where you're at. Where do you need to tune this? Is your mind starting to spiral? Are you starting to drift into negativity? Are you starting to feel irritated or frustrated with other people without looking at what may be bringing this up? Are you choosing an action in moments where you know what's right to do? These little check-ins can tell you just how much attention these different areas need. Because without constantly maintaining and upkeeping this, it will atrophy and it will lead to struggles down the road, especially the longer it's put on a shelf.
Yeah, we maintain this armor by developing discipline and being ready. It's not something that you just put on and then say, oh, it looks cool, and just, leave it at that. Because it will rust, it will weaken, it will fail you when you need it the most. And this type of armor works the same way. If we don't practice the things that we build this armor out of, if we don't find ways to do that, then it's going to become fragile. And in a moment of crisis, it's going to shatter and we are going to be freaking out, right? So the things you mentioned are great. Another couple that I'd throw in there is community and acts of service, because we're never alone. We don't do any of this stuff alone. So standing shoulder to shoulder with people, figuratively and actually, helps us know that we can endure, because we're better together than we are separate or apart, right?
Yeah, and with community, I mean, you get that feedback you need. You get people who can tell you where you're at. You know, often we psychologically will push our own shortcomings. We will put it out of our perspective to focus on what we can do. And it's good to have a community that you trust and that you respect, that can give you feedback and help you evaluate where you're at with any one of these things. Hey, I notice you haven't been stepping up at work. Hey, I notice that you have been getting in more arguments with your spouse recently. You know, these things are great to help us. Hey, you know what? I haven't noticed this about me, but you're right.
Yep. And acts of service is another one that I would throw in there. You know, practicing what we believe by serving others, by walking the talk. So, because again, you know, the path of life is about alignment. And if we just lock ourselves away into echo chambers and isolate ourselves away, we can't align with the living force of the universe, because it thrives on connection. So you gotta, you know, don't overdo it. You know, take time to be in solitude from time to time, as long as you're doing stuff that, you know, takes care of you. Don't linger too long away from others for too long. And of course, the agreements that reinforce this stuff is family. We don't maintain these things alone. We need the encouragement or the correction sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And we need the camaraderie of the people walking the path with us, because they're going through it too. And they need to know that we're there for them, and we need to know, to have faith that they're in it with us too. You know, we were talking to Gabe last show, and there was something that we, you know, talked about as far as like, you know, first responders and military. There is a bond that's created there, because everybody's going through the same.
You know,
it does strengthen you, and you can do anything after that. When you got enough people who's going through the same crap as you are, it makes you, I mean, it reinforces you to the point where you can do anything almost, right?
Yeah.
So
well, it's like everyone's now carrying this weight. You're not carrying this massive thing alone. Everyone is pitching their part, holding that bridge up, you know?
Right. So
that's
empowering. Again, so being ready, practicing for these potential scenarios that will inevitably come at some point. You never know when they're going to happen. It's not about being afraid of being attacked. It's about choosing alignment, like I said, with truth. This is just the way, it's just a fact of life. Things are going to happen. If we let ourselves drift into complacency, then we're going to be in trouble when things do happen. If we practice and we're ready as we can be, we sharpen our minds, we guard our hearts, we strengthen our spirits, we're going to be way, way better suited to deal with these storms of life. So the discipline of readiness is not a burden. It's going to suck a little bit, you know. Discipline isn't always fun. When we talked about the truth of self-care, most of that stuff's not fun.
Yeah, right.
You know, sometimes it is. You know, Netflix binges and going to Starbucks or whatever every once in a while. Most of it's not fun though, because we're preparing now to live a good life later. So, and that's freedom. Enduring some of the suck now so that you don't have to suck later. That's freedom. Any closing thoughts about our suit of armor that we have built now with shield and sword?
You know, as with everything we talk about on this podcast, these are things to be mindful of. And if you're hearing this and you're like, man, I think my breastplate's getting rusty, I think my sword is not sharp enough to cut through butter, that's okay. It's all about awareness and starting where you're at. You got to meet yourself where you're at so you can start honing this, so you can start cultivating the skills. Practice, practice, practice. You can't pick up a guitar and know how to play a song. You got to start practicing and messing up a lot until you start getting it down. It's okay to be where you're at. And most people are, ironically. So just meet yourself where you're at and have grace as you go through cultivating and shining this up.
And give grace to others. Yeah.
Yes.
What would your armor look like? Just curious.
Man, I think my chest plate would glow. But I could definitely use with a little bit of a sharper edge on my sword.
Yeah.
Sword.
Sword. Your sword.
And I think the shield is getting more beautiful every day. I think it's something I never focused on enough for years until I started this training. And now it's become the most important piece for me, because if you can have a clear mind, you can go through things effectively and in truth. Through truth, all things are clear. You just got to stop your mind from lying to yourself, because our minds love to do that.
Right. So we've talked about building a set of armor for our spirit, right? Things like truth and discernment, compassion and courage and grace. And it's important to know, it's important to understand that these are not abstract ideals. These are actual living practices that we must endure. And the more we practice, the better we get. Practice, practice, practice. The world, the universe, some kid down the street will test you. It's just the way it is. There's never a time where fear will not whisper something to you. There's never a time where we will not have some shadow pressing in on us. But with these ideas and with these understandings, we don't have to stand unguarded. We can be protected, not because we're paranoid, not because we're rigid and hard, but because we're at our best when we're resilient and when we're humble and when we're free. So the axiom of light that I'll leave everybody with today is one of my favorite ones, and it is one of the most powerful ones, and we've talked about it earlier. The truth does not care about popularity. It doesn't care. Confusion can be overcome. And it comes in, we're all confused at some point. We get so much information. We get so much pressure to be this or be that, or stop doing this or stop doing that. That stuff can be overcome by patience and discernment, right?
Yeah.
And that mercy and compassion guard our hearts, because we are connected. And what happens to others will happen to us at some point. And the things that we do truly reverberate out to everyone else in some capacity.
Guaranteed.
So to walk armored, right, is not to separate ourselves or to close ourselves in away from others. It's to step out into the world as a servant, a guardian, a bearer of light, so that we can serve, so that we're not consumed by the things that are trying to consume us all. So before we get into our closing stuff we always do, I'll leave you with this. I want you to try to walk into each day as a warrior of light. Stand in truth. Guard your mind with patience. Protect your heart with compassion. Wield courage with mercy and justice. Keep your armor useful through daily practice and discipline. Practice, practice, practice. Above all, walk humbly and graciously, so that your strength becomes a gift to the world and not a weapon against it. And that you're not defenseless. You're not unprepared. You are armoring yourself in light. And with that, I don't think any shadow can overcome you. So let us pray. Eternal source of strength, I stand before you now. I affirm that I am clothed in light, not fear. I envelop myself with truth, for truth has no regard for popularity. I speak with integrity and walk with honesty, respecting the dignity of all life. I lift a shield of patience and discernment. When confusion distorts reason, I pause. I seek guidance. I choose wisely. I do not rush, for good comes in its own time. I guard my heart with compassion. I choose mercy over vengeance, understanding over judgment. Darkness has no purchase where light and love abide. I take up the sword of courage and justice. I will not be silent in the face of harm. My influence is a position of responsibility, and I use it to protect, to uplift, and to serve. I commit to the discipline of readiness. Through prayer, reflection, patience, and family, I make myself ready daily. I walk in humility, remembering that true strength is service, not domination. I stand armored in grace, moving without fear, shining without arrogance, and serving without end. In light I endure. In light I prevail. In light I live. And so it is.
So it is.
For our affirmations for today, I clothe myself in truth, for truth is my first defense and my strongest ally. I guard my mind with patience and discernment. Confusion cannot cloud the light within me. I protect my heart with compassion and mercy. Bitterness and hate will take no root in me. I wield courage as my sword, using my influence with responsibility and justice to protect and uplift. I maintain my armor daily through discipline, humility, and grace, knowing that strength is service, not domination. So, our journaling prompts for today. Where in my life do I already walk armored in light? How do I embody truth, compassion, patience, courage, or grace in my daily actions? What part of my armor feels strong and what part needs attention or discipline? And our second prompt, how can I wear spiritual armor without hardening myself against the world? What would it look like to live protected by truth and compassion, yet remain humble, open, and gracious towards others? And finally, our exercise for the day. I'm going to call this the Armor of Light Ritual. But if you don't like that word ritual, don't use it. Gosh, I know there's somebody out there.
You're not
somebody
wrong.
out there going right now, oh, ritual. Call it whatever you want. The Armor of Light exercise. There's a good one. To prepare for this, we're going to find a quiet place. Sit down, sit or lie down, whatever makes you more comfortable. What's important here is we're going to close our eyes and take 3 deep, slow breaths. You're going to inhale light and exhale fear. Depending on how you're oriented on the ground, you're going to imagine that roots are anchoring you to the earth. Step 1, we're going to visualize a radiant band of light wrapping around your waist like a belt. Once you have that visualization, say to yourself or out loud, I clothe myself in truth. Truth has no regard for popularity. I honor the dignity of myself and others, and I stand firmly in integrity. Next, we're going to move on to creating our shield. Imagine lifting a shield that glows with a calm, steady energy. When you have that in your mind, speak, I guard my mind with patience. Confusion cannot sway me. I seek guidance and act with wisdom. The next thing is our breastplate. Visualize a protective plate of golden light covering your chest, glowing with warmth. You're going to say, I protect my heart with compassion. Darkness has no purchase where love and mercy abide. The next thing we're going to create is our sword. A vision holding a blade, pure light, sharp and steady, forged from courage. You're going to say, I wield courage as my sword. My influence is my responsibility. I will not be silent in the face of harm. I act with justice and strength. And finally, we're going to create a cloak. Imagine a cloak of shimmering light resting gently on your shoulders, flowing all around you. Speak aloud or to yourself. I walked clothed in grace. Through discipline, humility, and family, I keep my armor strong. My strength is service, not domination. And sit with this for as long as you want, as long as you need. You're going to close it with an affirmation. Place your hands over your heart and take 1 deep breath and speak. I am armored in light. I walk in truth, patience, compassion, courage, and grace. No shadow or darkness has power over me. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. If you get a chance, you should go check out newashla.com. It's our website where all the coolest stuff you could ever imagine is. Probably, mostly. You get to see Michael. He's over there.
Yeah,
Michael's been writing some blogs for us, which are really good. We tried to share those on the socials, but social media doesn't like for us to share things away from them. It's horrible.
up on that.
Yeah, it's horrible. Everybody complains about it, but they don't care. We love you guys very much. With love and gratitude, Ad Lucium.
Ad Lucium.